The Fishman of the Alaskan Triangle. Part 1. The Old Sailor's Warning. The fire crackles in the wood stove as I sit here in my cabin overlooking Gastineau Channel, watching the winter sun set at 3 in the afternoon. My grandson Tommy sits across from me, 17 years old and full of dreams about making his fortune on the fishing boats. He doesn't know why I've called him here today, why I've finally agreed to tell him the truth about what happened 30 years ago. "Grandpa," he says, "everyone says you were the best fisherman in Southeast Alaska. Why'd you quit?" I take a long sip of coffee, feel its warmth against the cold memory that's never left me. "I'm going to tell you a story, Tommy. And when I'm done, you're going to understand why I don't want you going out past Point Retreat. Why I don't want you fishing the deep waters of the Triangle." He leans forward, eager, young, immortal in the way only the young can be. This story starts in the fall of 1994, but really, it starts long before that. Starts with the Tlingit elders and their warnings about the Kushtaka. Starts with the first Russian hunters who disappeared without a trace. Starts with something that's been in these waters since before humans walked on land. Part 2. The pattern emerges. September 1994. I was 42 years old, captain of the Maggie May, a 40-foot seiner I'd bought with 15 years of saved wages. I knew these waters like I knew my own hands, every reef, every current, every place the fish ran thick. I'd weathered storms that would have sunk lesser boats, brought in catches that made other captains green with envy. That fall, something changed. It started with whispers at the harbor. Eddie Kuznetsov's longliner, the Svetlana, had gone silent mid-voyage. Coast Guard found her drifting 3 days later, engines running, net still deployed, but no crew. Not a soul aboard. Coffee still warm in the thermos. Half-eaten sandwich on the captain's chair. Equipment failure, the official report said. Crew likely swept overboard in rough seas. But Eddie was a third-generation fisherman. His father had survived the '64 earthquake tsunami. Eddie didn't get swept overboard. 2 weeks later, the Pacific Dawn vanished. 40-foot crabber, crew of 4, all experienced men. Last radio contact was at 4 a.m., routine check-in, nothing unusual. By dawn, she was gone. Coast Guard searched for a week. Found nothing. Not a life preserver, not a fuel slick, not a piece of debris. Rogue wave, they said. Can happen without warning. The fishermen at the Alaskan bar knew better. We gathered there most nights, and the talk grew darker with each round. Old Tom Brightwater, a Tlingit elder who'd fished these waters for 60 years, sat in his usual corner and watched us with knowing eyes. "The Kushtaka are hungry," he said one night. We all went quiet. Even the young hotshots who usually laughed at the old stories. "What are you talking about, Tom?" asked Marcus Chen, captain of the Northern Star. Marcus was my closest friend. We'd fished together since we were teenagers, knew each other's boats and habits like brothers. Tom took a long pull from his beer. "My grandfather told me about them. Said they live in the deep places, where the light never reaches. They look like men, but they're not men. They look like otters, but they're not otters. There's something in between, something that hunts at the edge of two worlds." "Come on, Tom," said Marcus. "We've all heard the legends. But 2 boats." "3, Tom interrupted. "The Aleut wind went down last month. They said it was a collision, but there was nothing to collide with. And if you talk to the Aleut fishermen, they'll tell you about the Coniac that disappeared in August, and the Sanak before that." The room felt suddenly colder. "That's 5 boats in 3 months, I said slowly. Tom nodded. "And all of them vanished in the same area. Between here and Barrow, out past the shelf where the water drops to 2,000 fathoms. The Triangle, some call it now. Like that place in the Atlantic." "So what are you saying?" Marcus asked. "That some legendary creature is sinking boats." "I'm saying that when the old stories start coming true, smart men pay attention." Tom stood up, drained his beer, and headed for the door. At the threshold, he turned back. "And I'm saying that I won't fish those waters anymore. Not for all the king crab in Alaska." After he left, we tried to laugh it off. Blamed the whiskey and the long season. But that night, I dreamed of black water and something rising from the depths, and I woke up in a cold sweat. Part 3, Marcus's warning. The next few weeks passed in uneasy routine. I took the Maggie May out daily, but I noticed I was staying closer to shore, avoiding the deep water. Other boats did the same. The fishing suffered, but we all felt it, that primitive instinct that keeps prey animals from watering holes where predators lurk. Then came October 15th. I remember the date because it was my daughter's birthday, and I'd promised to be home early for dinner. I was hauling in my nets when Marcus's voice crackled over the radio. "Jimmy, you got a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" Static. Then, "I need to tell you something." "Not over the radio." "Where are you?" I gave him my position, and 20 minutes later the Northern Star pulled alongside. Marcus climbed across to my deck, and I could see immediately that something was wrong. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he accepted the coffee I poured him. "What happened?" I asked. He stared into the coffee cup for a long moment. "Yesterday, I was running nets about 40 miles northwest of here. Weather was clear, seas calm. Around dusk, I was standing at the rail, watching the net come up, when I saw something in the water." "What kind of something?" "That's the thing, Jimmy. I don't know. At first, I thought it was a harbor seal. You know how they pop up sometimes, curious about the boats. But this was bigger. Much bigger. And it didn't move like a seal." "Orca?" "No. God, I wish it had been an orca." He took a shaky sip of coffee. It surfaced about 30 feet from the boat. Head and shoulders came out of the water. At first, in the twilight, I thought it was a diver. You know, like someone had fallen overboard from another boat. I started to turn the Star toward it, get ready to fish whoever it was out of the water. But then I got a better look. Jimmy, it wasn't human. I mean, it looked almost human. It had a head, shoulders, arms. But the proportions were wrong. The head was too big, skull too broad. And the skin, he stopped, his hand trembling so badly he had to set down the coffee cup. The skin wasn't skin. It was scales. Blue-green, like a salmon, but bigger, overlapping. And it had gills. Right here. He touched his neck. 3 slits on each side, opening and closing. I wanted to laugh, to tell him he'd been seeing things in the bad light. But I'd known Marcus for 25 years, and he wasn't a man given to flights of fancy. "What did it do?" I asked. "It watched me. That's what made it so awful, Jimmy. It didn't just look at the boat, it looked at me. Studied me. Its eyes were huge and black, like a seal's, but there was something behind them. Intelligence. Intent. It knew I was seeing it, and it wanted me to know." "How long?" "Maybe a minute. Felt like an hour. Then it made a sound, not a scream or a roar, but something else. Like grinding gravel underwater. And it dove. But before it went under, I saw its hands." He looked up at me, and I saw real fear in his eyes. "It had fingers, Jimmy. 4 fingers and a thumb, like us. But they were webbed, and they ended in claws. Black claws, curved like fishing hooks." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the boat creak and the water slap against the hull. "You think I'm crazy," Marcus finally said. "No," I replied truthfully. "I think you saw something. Question is, what?" "I've been thinking about what Tom Brightwater said. About the Kushtaka." "Marcus. I know how it sounds. But 5 boats have disappeared, Jimmy. 5 crews just gone, vanished like they never existed. And now I see this thing, this creature that shouldn't exist, watching me from the water. Tell me that's a coincidence." I couldn't. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I've got a family to feed, payments on the boat. I can't just quit. But I'm going to be careful. Stay in shallower water, don't fish at dusk or dawn, keep the crew on high alert." He stood up, preparing to climb back to his boat. "Jimmy, promise me something. If anything happens to the Northern Star, if we go missing like the others, promise me you'll tell Sarah and the kids what I told you today. Promise me they'll know I didn't just abandon them or make some stupid mistake." Nothing's going to happen, Marcus. Promise me. I promised. And 3 days later, I wished I'd tied him to my mast and refused to let him leave. Part 4. The Night of the Northern Star. October 18th, 1994. The day is burned into my memory like a brand. I was 90 miles northwest of Juneau, hauling king crab in water that was just a bit too deep for comfort. The weather had been perfect all day, unusual for October, and I'd pushed my luck, going farther out than I normally would. The catches had been spectacular. By 4 p.m., my holds were nearly full, and I was feeling good about heading back to port. That's when my radio squawked to life. "Jimmy, you there? Jimmy, come in." Marcus's voice, but wrong. Tight. Controlled fear. I grabbed the transmitter. "I'm here, Marcus. What's your position?" 23 miles northwest of Shelter Island. "Jimmy, you near there?" I checked my charts. "I'm about 20 miles south of you." "What's wrong?" "Static. The hiss of distance and interference. Then, there's something in the water. Near the boat. It's been circling us for the last 10 minutes. My blood went cold. "Is it the thing you saw before?" "I don't know. Can't get a good look. It keeps diving when we shine the lights on it, but it's big, Jimmy. Really big. Bigger than what I saw last week. And there's more than one." "More than one?" I was already firing up my engines, plotting the fastest course to his position. "At least 3. Maybe more. They're communicating somehow. I can hear sounds underwater. The sonar's going crazy." His voice rose slightly. "Jesus. One just brushed against the hull. Jimmy, they're not afraid of the boat." "I'm coming to you, Marcus. 20 miles. I'll be there in 45 minutes. Get your crew inside, lock the doors, keep the lights on." "Copy that. Hurry. Jimmy. Something about this doesn't feel right. It feels like..." The radio went to static. "Marcus. Marcus, come in." Nothing. I pushed the Maggie May harder than I ever had, engine screaming, bow crashing through swells. The sun was setting, painting the water blood red, and fog was rolling in from the west. Perfect conditions for disaster. I tried the radio every 2 minutes. "Marcus, come in. Northern Star, this is the Maggie May, do you copy?" Silence. After 20 minutes, I radioed the Coast Guard, gave them Marcus's last known position, told them we had a vessel in distress. They said they'd send a helicopter, but it would take time. The fog closed in around me like a fist. Visibility dropped to 100 feet, then 50. I had to slow down, relying on instruments, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it over the engine noise. Every shadow in the water looked like a boat, every sound like a distress signal. Finally, my radar showed a large contact ahead. I eased off the throttle, grabbed my spotlight, and swept it across the water. The Northern Star appeared in the beam like a ghost ship. She was listing hard to starboard, maybe 15 degrees, her running light still on but the wheelhouse dark. No movement on deck. The sea around her was calm, almost unnaturally so. Just a gentle swell that made her rock slowly back and forth. I brought the Maggie May alongside, close enough to see the details. The Northern Star's nets were deployed, trailing into the water. Her engines were running, I could hear them, a steady rumble. The deck was wet, not from sea spray but from something else. Something thick and glistening in my spotlight beam. "Marcus!" I shouted. "Marcus, can you hear me?" My voice echoed across the water and died in the fog. I grabbed my gaff, my flare gun, my knife. Strapped on a life vest and a headlamp. Every instinct screamed at me to call the Coast Guard and wait for them. But Marcus was my friend. If there was any chance he was alive, injured, needing help. I tied off to the Northern Star and climbed aboard. Part 5. Below deck. The deck of the Northern Star was wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. Everything was in its place, coiled ropes, nets, winches, but it all felt staged, like a museum display of a fishing boat rather than the real thing. And the smell. God, the smell. Brine, yes, but mixed with something organic and rotten. Like a beach at low tide where dead things have washed up and sat in the sun. The slick substance I'd seen from my boat covered everything. When I knelt and touched it, it was cold and oily, thicker than water but thinner than mucus. It didn't come off easily when I wiped my hand on my jacket. "Marcus." I called again. "Anyone here?" The only answer was the creak of the boat and the throb of the engines. I made my way to the wheelhouse. The door hung open, swaying slightly with the motion of the vessel. Inside, everything was as it should be, almost. The radio was on, crackling with static. The coffee pot was half full, still warm to the touch. Marcus's jacket hung on its usual hook. But Marcus's logbook was open on the console, and what was written there made my hand shake. The last entry was timed at 4:23 p.m., just minutes before he'd called me. The handwriting started neat, then devolved into an increasingly frantic scrawl. "They're not fish. They're not seals. They're something else. 3 of them circling. Tony thinks he saw one climb partially up the net. That's impossible. But I saw it too. Arms. It had arms. For 15, more of them now. 5, 6. Hard to count. They keep diving. One breached next to the boat. Got a good look. Face was almost human. Eyes like a seal but something behind them. Intelligence. For 20, they're making sounds. Can hear them through the hull. Like they're talking. Coordinating. Crew is scared. Hell, I'm scared. Called Jimmy. He's coming but it will take time. For 23, something hit the hull. Hard. Boat shook. They're not just curious anymore. There. The entry ended mid-sentence. The pen had skittered across the page, leaving a long line of ink. I backed out of the wheelhouse, my headlamp beam cutting through the darkness. Where was the crew? Marcus had 4 men with him. They couldn't all have just vanished. Then I heard it. A sound from below deck. Not quite a splash, more like something heavy and wet moving across metal. Every fiber of my being told me to leave. Get back to my boat, radio the Coast Guard, wait for backup. But I thought of Marcus's family. His wife Sarah, his 2 daughters. I thought of my promise. I descended the stairs to the lower deck. The hold was flooded. Not completely. The water was only knee-deep, but it shouldn't have been flooded at all. The Northern Star was a sound vessel, and there was no sign of hull damage. The water must have come from somewhere else. My headlamp swept across the hold. The crab tanks were overturned, their contents scattered. Ropes and gear floated in the dark water. And there, perched on the largest crab tank like some nightmare bird, was the creature. Part 6. Face to face. I froze. My breath stopped. Time itself seemed to pause. It was massive, 7 feet tall at least, maybe more. In my headlamp beam, its scales shimmered blue-green, each one the size of a silver dollar, overlapping in perfect patterns that spoke of millions of years of evolution. Its body was humanoid but wrong. Torso too long, limbs too powerful, proportions that suggested a life spent moving through water rather than across land. But it was the face that held me paralyzed. Almost human. 2 eyes, a nose of sorts, a mouth. But the eyes were huge and round and black as deep water, with no visible pupil, just an endless void that seemed to swallow light. The nose was barely there, just 2 slits that flared with each breath. And when its mouth opened slightly, I saw rows of needle-sharp teeth designed for gripping and tearing. Along its neck, 3 parallel slits on each side opened and closed rhythmically. Gills. Breathing air and water both. Its hands, God, its hands. 4 fingers and a thumb, like ours, but twice as long and tipped with black claws curved like fishing hooks. The webbing between the fingers was translucent, shot through with dark veins. We stared at each other. 5 seconds. 10. 20. The only sounds were the slosh of water and my own ragged breathing. Then it tilted its head, the gesture so human and yet so alien that my mind recoiled. It was studying me, analyzing, deciding. Where's Marcus? I managed to whisper, my voice cracking. The creature opened its mouth wider. Its throat worked, and a sound emerged that wasn't quite language but wasn't quite animal either. A series of clicks and groans and something that might have been words filtered through an impossible vocal apparatus. But somehow, impossibly, I understood. Not the sounds themselves, but the meaning behind them. The same way you understand when a dog growls or a cat hisses. Primal communication that bypasses language. Gone. Taken. The cold deep keeps them. Taken where? Are they alive? Its head tilted the other way. Another series of sounds, like stones grinding in an underwater current. The deep does not give back what it takes. They are ours now. Payment for the debt. What debt? We didn't do anything to you. The creature's mouth opened wider, not threatening, but something else. Amusement. Disdain. Its next sounds were harsher, more forceful. Your kind takes. Nets drag the bottom. Hooks sink deep. You pull up what is ours and call it yours. The sea was here first. We were here first. Now the sea takes back. My mind raced. This was impossible. I was having a conversation with a creature that shouldn't exist. But the water was cold around my legs, the boat was real, and Marcus was gone. You killed them. You killed my friend. Not killed. Taken. There is a difference. They live in the deep now, changed, made right. They breathe the water. They hunt in the dark. They serve the old purpose. Horror bloomed in my chest. You turned them into things like you. We give the sea back what it has lost. Balance must be maintained. The creature shifted on its perch, and I saw for the first time that there were others in the shadows. Shapes moving in the flooded corners of the hold, staying just beyond my light. How many? 3. 5. More. I backed toward the stairs, hand scrabbling for the knife on my belt. The creature watched but didn't move. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Someone must carry the warning. Tell your kind. The triangle is closed. These waters are claimed. The debt will be collected from all who trespass. And if we don't listen? The creature made a sound that might have been laughter, wet, bubbling, ancient. Then the sea will take more boats. More crews. More debt paid until the balance is restored. We are patient. We have waited for 10,000 years. We can wait 10,000 more. It tensed, preparing to move. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run. Wait, I said. Marcus, if he's alive, if there's any part of him that's still him, tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I tried. The creature paused. Its massive eyes regarded me for a long moment. He does not remember you. The deep washes away the before time. He is ours now. Then it dove. One moment perched on the tank, the next sliding into the water with barely a splash. The other shapes followed, moving with liquid grace. Within seconds, the hold was empty except for the settling water and my own terrified breathing. I ran. Scrambled up the stairs, across the deck, over to the Maggie May. Started my engines and throttled up before I'd even untied all the lines. One rope snapped, and I didn't care. I pointed my bow toward Juno and ran. Behind me, the Northern Star slowly settled deeper into the water, her light still on, a floating tomb disappearing into the fog. Part 7. The Aftermath. I radioed the Coast Guard with my position and Marcus's last known coordinates. Told them the Northern Star was adrift and taking on water. Crew missing, possible emergency. I didn't tell them about the creature. Who would believe me? They found the Northern Star 3 hours later, half submerged. By dawn, she'd slipped under completely. Divers went down the next day but found nothing useful. The holds were empty. No bodies, no blood, no signs of violence. Just a flooded boat that had somehow taken on water from an unknown source. Probable hull breach, the official report concluded. Crew likely swept overboard in the rapid flooding. Bodies not recovered due to strong currents and deep water. They searched for 2 weeks. Never found Marcus or any of his crew. I went to the funeral, empty casket, closed ceremony. Sarah was devastated. The girls clung to their mother and cried. I wanted to tell them what I'd seen, wanted to explain that Marcus hadn't died from some random accident or stupid mistake. But how could I? They'd think I was crazy or cruel, making up stories about monsters when the truth was simply that the sea had taken him like it had taken so many others. After the funeral, I found old Tom Brightwater standing by his truck in the church parking lot. You saw them, he said. Not a question. I nodded. Did they speak? After a fashion. And what did they say? I told him. All of it. The creature, the hold, the impossible conversation. When I finished, Tom was quiet for a long time, looking out toward the water. My grandfather told me a story, he finally said. About his grandfather, who was a shaman. Said that when the Russians first came, hunting sea otters nearly to extinction, taking so much from the ocean that the balance broke, the Kushtaka were angry. They took 3 Russian ships in one season. Drowned the crews, sent the ships to the bottom. The Russians stopped hunting. For a while. Until they forgot the warning. Then it happened again. And again. Every few generations, the sea reminds us. He looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. You were lucky, Jimmy. They chose you to carry the warning. But warnings only work if people listen. I'm listening, Tom. Good. Because here's what you need to know. They're not evil, not in the way we understand it. They're just old. Older than our grandest buildings, older than our stories. And from their perspective, we're the invaders. We're the ones who came to their world and started taking without asking. So what do? We respect the triangle. We don't fish those waters. We tell others to do the same. And we remember that the ocean is not ours, we're just borrowing a little piece of it. Part 8. The escalation. For a few months, it seemed like the message had spread. Fishing boats avoided the deep waters of the triangle. The harbors buzzed with rumors, sea monsters, curses, bad luck waters. The rational men laughed it off, but even they found excuses to fish elsewhere. Then December came. A Japanese factory trawler, the Hokkaido Maru, entered triangle waters. She was massive, 350 feet long, capable of processing tons of fish daily. Her captain either hadn't heard the warnings or didn't care. He had quotas to meet and shareholders to please. The Hokkaido Maru vanished on December 12. 147 crew. Gone in a single night. The Japanese government demanded answers. The Coast Guard launched the biggest search operation in Alaska's history. They found the ship 2 days later, capsized in water too deep to salvage. Sonar imaging showed massive holes in the hull, not the kind of damage that comes from rocks or weather, but deliberate breaches. Something had torn through the steel plating. No survivors. No bodies. Just a destroyed ship resting on the ocean floor. That's when the Navy got involved. They sent a submarine, the USS Asheville, to investigate. It was all classified, of course, but word leaked out as it always does. The submarine spent a week in the triangle, using sonar and underwater cameras to map the area. When the Asheville returned to base, her crew was debriefed and sworn to secrecy. But one of the sonar technicians had a brother in Juneau who talked after too many beers at the Alaskan bar. They found structures, the man said, voice low. Down at the bottom, in the deepest parts. Not natural formations. Built structures. Like ruins, but not like anything humans would make. And there were things moving around them. Lots of things. The sonar couldn't get a clear image, but the shapes were big. Really big. And when the submarine got too close, something hit them. Dented the hull. The captain ordered immediate withdrawal. What did the Navy say it was? I asked. I'd been at the bar that night, listening to every word. Officially, nothing. Classified. But unofficially, the captain wrote in his log that they'd encountered indigenous hostile life forms of unknown origin. Those words exactly. Then everything got buried. The Navy didn't send any more submarines. But they did issue a quiet advisory to avoid the triangle waters. Insurance companies started refusing to cover boats that fished there. The message was clear, stay out. Most people listened. But not everyone. Part 9. The transformation. Winter gave way to spring, and I tried to move on. I fished the safer waters, made enough to keep the Maggie May running and food on the table. But I couldn't stop thinking about what the creature had said. They live in the deep now, changed, made right. What did that mean? Were Marcus and his crew still alive down there somewhere? Transformed into something like the creatures? Or was it just a story the thing told me to make the horror worse? In May, I got a call from Sarah, Marcus's widow. She wanted to meet me at the harbor. When I got there, she was standing on the dock looking out at the water, her face pale and drawn. "Jimmy," she said, "something happened last night. I need to know if I'm going crazy." "What kind of something?" "I woke up around 3 a.m. Heard something outside. Thought maybe it was a bear getting into the trash. So I looked out the window." She paused, hands shaking. "There was something in the yard. Standing by the trees. It looked like, Jimmy, it looked like Marcus." My blood turned to ice. "Sarah." "I know how it sounds. But I saw him. Same height. Same build. But he was different. Wet. Covered in something that shined in the moonlight. And when he turned toward the house, his eyes..." She stopped, tears streaming down her face. "They were black. Completely black. Like a seal's eyes." "What did you do?" I screamed. Woke the girls. By the time I looked back out the window, he was gone. But Jimmy, there were wet footprints in the grass, leading from the woods to the house and back. And they weren't normal footprints. They were webbed. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her she'd had a nightmare, that grief plays tricks on the mind. But I'd seen what I'd seen. I knew what lived in those waters. "Has it happened again?" I asked. "No. But I keep feeling like something's watching the house. And last night, the girls said they heard voices outside their window, calling their names. In Marcus's voice." "Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Lock your doors and windows. Don't go outside after dark. And if you see anything at all, don't try to communicate with it. Call me immediately." "Jimmy, what's happening? What happened to Marcus?" I told her. Everything. The creature in the hold, the conversation, the transformation. She listened in silence, her face growing paler with each word. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then, "So he's not dead?" "Not really." "I don't know, Sarah. Whatever he is now, it's not Marcus anymore. But if there's a chance, if even a small part of him is still in there." "No." I gripped her shoulders, made her look at me. "Whatever that thing was that you saw, it's not your husband. Marcus is gone. And if you try to reach out to what's left, you'll put yourself and your daughters in danger." She pulled away from me, angry now. "How can you say that? How can you just give up on him?" "Because that thing told me Marcus doesn't remember his life before. The deep washed it away. He's been changed into something else, something that serves the old purpose. Trying to get him back would be like trying to turn a butterfly back into a caterpillar. It can't be done." Sarah left without another word. I watched her go, knowing I'd probably lost her friendship but hoping I'd saved her life. 2 weeks later, she moved back to Seattle with the girls. I never saw her again. Part 10. Others come forward. Sarah's encounter opened a floodgate. Once word got around that someone had seen one of the missing fishermen, others started coming forward with their own stories. A deckhand from the Pacific Dawn was spotted by his brother, standing on the beach at dawn, staring at his old house. One of Eddie Kuznetsov's crew was seen by his wife, swimming in the harbor at night, moving through the water with impossible grace. All of them were changed. All of them had those black, fathomless eyes and skin that shimmered with scales. The authorities called it mass hysteria. Grief-induced hallucinations. But those of us who'd lost people to the triangle knew better. The creatures were sending the transformed ones back, showing them what they'd once been, what they'd lost. Why? Tom Brightwater had a theory. "It's not cruelty," he said. "It's a warning. They're showing us what happens when we ignore the rules. Take from the sea, and the sea takes from you. And what it takes, it keeps." The sightings continued through the summer. Always at night. Always near water. The transformed ones never spoke, never tried to make contact. They just watched. Remembered, maybe, in whatever way they could still remember. Then, in August, something changed. Part 11, The Attack. The Silver King was a sport fishing charter, taking tourists out for weekend catches. Her captain, Dean Wainwright, was a good man but stubborn. When his clients asked to fish near the triangle, they'd heard the stories and thought it would be exciting. Dean agreed. He figured the warnings were exaggerated, that if he stayed in relatively shallow water and kept close to shore, they'd be fine. He was wrong. The Silver King left Juneau on a Friday morning with Dean, a deckhand, and 4 tourists. By Friday night, she was overdue. By Saturday morning, the Coast Guard was searching. They found her on Saturday afternoon, drifting 15 miles from her last known position. The engines were running, the radio was on, but there was no one aboard. This time, though, there was evidence. The deck was covered in that same slick substance I'd found on the Northern Star. Deep gouge marks scored the railings, 4 parallel lines, like giant claw marks. One of the fighting chairs was torn completely off its mounting bolts. And there was blood. Not much, but enough. Human blood. The Coast Guard investigation found something else, a camera. One of the tourists had been filming when it happened. The footage was classified immediately, but like with the submarine, word got out. A Coast Guard investigator showed it to his wife, and she told her sister, and the story spread. I heard it third hand, but the details were consistent. The video showed the last 5 minutes on the Silver King. In it, Dean and his clients were laughing, reeling in catches, having a great time. Then something bumped the boat. Hard. Dean looked over the side, confused. One of the tourists kept filming. More bumps. The boat rocked. Dean shouted to his deckhand to check for damage. That's when they appeared in the video, shapes in the water, circling the boat. At least a dozen of them. The camera caught one surfacing near the stern. Scaled, massive, those black eyes reflecting the sunlight. The tourists started screaming. Dean grabbed a gaff, trying to push one of the creatures away from the boat. It grabbed the gaff, yanked it from his hands, and bent the metal pole like it was made of clay. Then the creatures started climbing aboard. The video became chaotic after that. Running feet, screams, the camera dropping and catching flashes of scaled limbs and clawed hands. Splashes as people went overboard. Dean's voice shouting to abandon ship. And underneath it all, that grinding, groaning sound, the creatures communicating. The video ended with the camera lying on its side on the deck, showing an empty railing and dark water beyond. In the final seconds, something massive moved past the lens. Then nothing. 6 people. Gone. Just like that. The incident made national news, though the details were heavily sanitized. Boating accident in Alaska waters. No survivors found. Investigation ongoing. The video was never released to the public. But it changed everything. The military announced that the triangle was now a prohibited zone. Any vessel entering those waters would be subject to immediate Coast Guard interception and impoundment. They framed it as a safety measure, protecting citizens from dangerous waters. Those of us who knew the truth understood. They were trying to prevent a war with something we couldn't beat. Part 12. The Delegation. 3 weeks after the Silver King incident, I got an unexpected visitor. Old Tom Brightwater came to my cabin just after dawn, accompanied by 2 men I didn't recognize. One was Tlingit like Tom, elderly and weathered. The other was younger, maybe 40, wearing the kind of clothes that suggested he was from somewhere else, tailored jacket, clean boots. Jimmy, Tom said, this is William Larson from the Department of the Interior, and Henry Kargwantan, an elder from the Hoona tribe. We shook hands, and I invited them in. Tom got straight to the point. Henry's grandfather was a shaman who dealt with the Kushtaka back in the 1920s. And Mr. Larson here has been investigating the triangle disappearances at the federal level. I've read your statement about what you saw on the Northern Star, Larson said. I've also read statements from 19 other witnesses who've seen the transformed fisherman. And I've watched the footage from the Silver King. Mr. Murphy, I need to know, did the creature you encountered indicate any possibility of negotiation? I thought back to that moment in the flooded hold. It said we were trespassing. That the triangle was closed. It said they'd keep taking boats until the balance was restored. What balance? The creature claimed we'd taken too much from the sea. That they were collecting a debt. Henry Kargwantan spoke for the first time. his voice deep and measured. My grandfather's grandfather made a treaty with them. Back when the commercial fishing first came to Alaska, the Kushtaka agreed to let humans harvest from the sea, but only within limits. There were sacred waters that were forbidden. Areas too deep, too old, too much theirs. The triangle, I said. Yes. But the treaty was oral, passed down through the shamans. When Christianity came, many of the old ways were forgotten. The shamans died. The knowledge was lost. And people started fishing everywhere, including the forbidden waters. Larson leaned forward. Is there any way to re-establish the treaty? To communicate with these things and reach an agreement? My grandfather did it, Henry said. But he had training I don't have. He knew the old songs, the proper offerings, the way to approach them without causing offense. I don't. But you know some of it, Tom said. Enough, maybe. Henry was quiet for a moment. Perhaps. But approaching them is dangerous. They're angry now. The balance has been broken for so long that their patience is gone. They might kill anyone who tries to speak with them. That's a risk I'm willing to take, Larson said. We all looked at him. I'm authorized by the federal government to attempt diplomatic contact with any intelligent species inhabiting U.S. territorial waters. If these creatures are sentient, and all evidence suggests they are, then we need to try to reach an understanding before this escalates further. You mean before the Navy decides to depth charge the entire triangle, I said. Larson didn't deny it. There are people in Washington who want a military solution. I'm trying to prevent that. But I need leverage. I need proof that negotiation is possible. Henry and Tom exchanged a look. Then Henry nodded slowly. I'll try. But I'll need help. Someone who's spoken to them before and survived. Someone they've already chosen as a messenger. They all turned to look at me. No, I said immediately. No way. I got out once by luck. I'm not going back. Jimmy, Tom said gently. If we don't try this, the military will. They'll drop enough ordnance to turn the triangle into a graveyard. And the Kushtaka will retaliate. This will become a war that nobody wins. What about all the fishing boats in Alaska? What about the coastal towns? If we provoke them? They're already provoked, Larson interrupted. The question is whether we can de-escalate before both sides do something irreversible. I looked out my window at the harbor, at the boats I'd known my whole life. Thought about Marcus and all the others taken by the deep. Thought about more disappearances, more families grieving, more empty caskets. What exactly are you asking me to do? I finally said. Part 13. Preparation. Henry Carguantan spent the next week teaching me what he knew. The old songs, or what he remembered of them. The offerings that the Kushtaka traditionally accepted. The gestures that meant respect, peace, willingness to listen. The most important thing, he told me, is to show that you come not as an owner but as a guest. You're in their world, asking permission. Never forget that. We practiced on the beach, Henry correcting my pronunciation of words in a language I barely understood. Tom helped where he could, adding details from stories his grandfather had told him. Larson watched everything, taking notes, preparing his report. The plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. We would take my boat into the triangle, into the deep water where the Kushtaka dwelled. Henry would perform the old ceremony of approach. I would be there as witness and, if the creatures appeared, as someone they'd already spoken to. They chose you to carry their warning, Henry explained. That means they recognize you. They might be willing to listen if you speak with respect. Or they might drag us all into the deep. That's possible too. We set the date for September 15, 1995, almost exactly 1 year after Marcus's disappearance. Henry said the timing was important, something about tides and moon phases and old calendar systems I didn't understand. The night before we were supposed to leave, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my cabin, drinking coffee, watching the stars through my window. Around 2 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Tom Brightwater standing there. Can't sleep either, he asked. Seems unwise, the night before we sail into a death trap. Tom smiled slightly. I brought something. Thought you might need it. He handed me a small carved stone, a pendant on a leather cord. This belonged to my grandfather. It's a protection symbol. Probably won't stop a Kushtaka from taking you if it wants to, but it might make them pause long enough to listen. I took it, felt its weight. The carving was intricate, spirals and animal shapes I couldn't quite identify. Tom, if this goes badly. It won't. But if it does, I need you to tell my daughter. I know. I will. He gripped my shoulder. But it won't come to that. The Kushtaka are old, Jimmy. Older than grudges, older than revenge. They remember the treaty even if we forgot. Give them a reason to hope we can honor it again, and they'll listen. I hope you're right. So do I, he said quietly. So do I. Part 14. Into the Triangle. We left at dawn, the Maggie May carrying me, Henry, Tom, and Larson. The Coast Guard had been notified but told to stand back unless we called for help. No military presence, nothing that could be seen as threatening. The morning was clear and cold, the water like glass. We headed northwest, into the Triangle, following the same course Marcus had taken a year before. Every mile we traveled, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. By noon, we'd reached the coordinates Henry had specified, a point roughly in the center of the triangle, where the water dropped to over 2,000 fathoms. The depth finder showed nothing but darkness below us. This is the place, Henry said. He'd been quiet all morning, preparing himself. Now he opened his pack and began removing items. A drum, cedar branches, a carved wooden mask, small bundles wrapped in cloth. What are those? Larson asked, pointing to the bundles. Offerings. Salmon oil, cedar, copper, things the Kushtaka value. My grandfather said these show respect for the old ways. Henry put on the mask, a striking piece carved to look like an otter with a half-human face. Then he began to drum, a steady rhythm that echoed across the water. And he sang. I didn't understand the words, but the melody was beautiful and sad. A song of mourning, of apology, of hope. Henry's voice carried across the still water, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Then the water around us began to move. Here they come, Tom whispered. Shapes appeared in the depths, rising toward us. Dozens of them. Maybe more. Moving in a coordinated pattern, circling the boat. I saw scaled bodies, powerful limbs, those massive black eyes watching from below. Henry continued singing, never breaking rhythm. He threw the offerings into the water, the salmon oil first, then the cedar, then small pieces of copper that glinted as they sank. The circling shapes moved closer. They're surfacing, Larson said, his voice tight with fear. 4 of them broke the water's surface, forming a square around the Maggie May. They were larger than the one I'd seen in the Northern Star's hold, 9 feet tall at least, powerfully built. Ancient. One of them fixed its eyes on me, and I knew. It was the same one. The one who'd spoken to me before. Henry finished his song and lowered the drum. In the sudden silence, he spoke in English. We come to speak of the old treaty. We come to ask forgiveness for trespassing. We come to restore the balance. The creature that had been watching me opened its mouth. That grinding, groaning sound emerged, and again, impossibly, I understood. The treaty was broken. The sacred waters were violated. Why should we trust the word of trespassers? Because we remember now, I said, surprising myself. Because you chose me to carry the warning, and I carried it. Because we're trying to make things right. Trying is not doing. Words are not actions. Then tell us what actions you require, Larson said, his voice shaking but firm. We're authorized to negotiate on behalf of the United States government. We can establish protected zones. We can enforce fishing limits. We can restore the balance. The 4 creatures looked at each other. More of that grinding communication. The one I'd spoken with before finally responded. The triangle will remain closed to your kind. No boats, no nets, no hooks. This is not negotiable. The deep is ours, and we will defend it. Agreed, Larson said quickly. The area will be designated a marine sanctuary. What else? The transformed ones you call missing will not be returned. They are ours now, part of the balance. Do not search for them. Do not try to reclaim them. I thought of Marcus, of Sarah, and the girls. Can they at least send messages to their families? Let them know. They do not remember their families. The deep has washed away who they were. They are Kushtaka now. To remind them would be cruelty. Silence. The boat rocked gently on the swells. Is there anything else? Henry asked. The creature's eyes swept across all of us. If the treaty is honored, there will be peace. If it is broken again, there will be no more warnings. Only the deep, taking what it is owed. Tell your kind. Then, as quickly as they'd appeared, the creatures dove. Within seconds, the water was still again, as if they'd never been there at all. Part 15. The new treaty. The federal government moved quickly. By November 1995, the entire Alaska Triangle was designated as a national marine sanctuary with the strictest protections in U.S. waters. No fishing, no resource extraction, no unauthorized vessels. Coast Guard patrols enforced the boundaries. The official reason given was protection of unique deep-sea ecosystems and undiscovered archaeological sites. The real reason was never made public. There were protests, of course. Fishing companies complained about lost revenue. Politicians talked about government overreach. But the ban held. Too many people in positions of power knew the truth, and they weren't willing to risk another confrontation. The disappearances stopped. No more boats vanished. No more empty vessels drifting in the fog. The Kushtaka had gotten what they wanted. But the transformed ones, the fishermen who'd been taken and changed, they didn't stop appearing. Even now, decades later, there are occasional sightings. A scaled figure standing on a beach at night. Something swimming in harbors with two human movements. Former crew members watching their old houses from the tree line, those black eyes reflecting moonlight. They never speak. Never interact. They just watch, these ghosts of men who went to sea and came back as something else. Sarah and her daughters never came back to Alaska. Last I heard, they were living somewhere in Oregon, trying to forget. I hope they found peace. Tom Brightwater died in 2003, peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, I told stories about him that made people laugh and cry. I didn't tell them about the treaty, about what he'd helped prevent. Some stories aren't meant for everyone. Henry Carguantan still lives in Hoona. We talk sometimes, checking in on each other, making sure the old knowledge isn't lost again. He's training his grandchildren in the songs and ceremonies, ensuring that if the treaty ever needs to be renewed, someone will know how. Part 16. Legacy. I'm 72 years old now. I sold the Maggie May 15 years ago, couldn't handle the boat alone anymore. I live in my cabin, watch the harbor, and remember. People still ask about the triangle. Tourists want to know about the mystery zone, the Alaska-Bermuda Triangle. I tell them it's just superstition, that the protected waters are for scientific research. They seem disappointed, wanting a better story. If only they knew. Sometimes, on clear nights, I walk down to the water's edge. I stand there and look out at the dark expanse where the triangle lies. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, I see lights in the water. Not boat lights. Something else. Something that moves too smoothly, too purposefully. The Kushtaka, still there. Still watching. Waiting to see if we keep our word. Tommy's choice. So that's why you won't take me past Point Retreat, Tommy says. We're still sitting in my cabin, the fire burning low. He's been quiet through most of the story, his young face cycling through disbelief, horror, and fascination. That's why, I confirm. And you really saw it. This creature. I saw it. Spoke with it. Made a treaty with it. Tommy is quiet for a long time. Finally, what happened to Marcus? The man who was your friend. Is he really still alive down there somewhere? In a sense. But he's not Marcus anymore. Whatever he was transformed into, it's not human. The deep took him and remade him into something that serves its purpose. That's horrible. It is. But it's also the price of trespassing. The ocean has its own rules, Tommy. Its own laws that predate ours by millions of years. We forget that at our peril. So what do you want me to do? Not become a fisherman. No, I say. Fish if you want to fish. There's good water, safe water. Make a living. Raise a family. But respect the boundaries. Remember that the triangle is closed for a reason. And pass that knowledge on to your children. You think the treaty will hold? As long as people honor it. But all it takes is one captain who thinks the rules don't apply to them, one company that decides profit is worth the risk, and the Kushtaka will respond. They're patient, but they're not forgiving. Tommy stands up, walks to the window, looks out at the darkening water. I believe you, Grandpa. I don't know if I should, but I do. Good. Because I'm too old to go negotiate another treaty. That job falls to you and your generation now. Keep the knowledge alive. Respect the old waters. And if you ever see something in the water that doesn't make sense, something that's almost human but not quite, you turn your boat around and you come home. I will. Promise me. I promise. Final words. I'm writing this down now because I'm old and memories fade. Because someday I'll be gone, and someone needs to know the truth. Not the sanitized government version. Not the legend. The real story of what happened in the Alaska Triangle and why certain waters are forbidden. If you're reading this, you're probably curious. Maybe you're a fisherman considering pushing into the triangle. Maybe you're a scientist wanting to study undiscovered ecosystems. Maybe you're just someone who doesn't believe in following rules. Let me save you some trouble. Don't. The Kushtaka are real. They're ancient, powerful, and they've claimed the triangle as their domain. The treaty holds because we respect it. Break that respect, and the disappearances will start again. You might think you're clever enough, equipped enough, brave enough to test those waters. Marcus thought that too. So did Dean Wainwright and the crew of the Silver King. So did Eddie Kuznetsov and Tony Brightwater and all the others whose names are carved on the memorial at the harbor. They're all gone now. Changed. Lost. Part of something older and stranger than human understanding. Don't be next. The ocean is not our friend. It's not our enemy either. It's something far more profound, a force of nature that existed long before we did and will continue long after we're gone. The Kushtaka are part of that force, guardians of the deep places where light never reaches and pressure would crush our bones to powder. We made a treaty with them. We promised to stay out of the triangle, to respect the boundaries, to remember that we're guests in their world. Keep that promise. For your sake. For your family's sake. For the sake of every person who lives and works on these waters. The triangle is closed. Let it stay that way. James Jimmy Murphy, former captain. F.V. Maggie May Juneau, Alaska, December 30th, 2025. P.S. If you see something watching from the water, something with black eyes and scaled skin, don't stare. Don't wave. Don't acknowledge it. Just turn away and go about your business. They're still out there, the transformed ones, caught between two worlds. They don't need your attention or your pity. They're beyond both now. And if you're ever in the Alaskan bar in Juneau, look for the old Tlingit men in the corner. Buy them a drink. Listen to their stories. They know things that science hasn't discovered and probably never will. They remember the old ways, the old treaties, the old laws that keep the balance. Remember, the sea was here first. It will be here last. And what lives in the deep places doesn't play by our rules. Stay safe out there. End. If you like The Fisherman's Real Story, hit the like button, subscribe for more, and share this story with your friends.